Have you ever liked the concept of hopping through time or dimensions or things like that in combination with your role-playing games? Let's take a look at something that might provide a little bit of that for you today. Hello, and thank you all for joining us again here today on Hessens County for another TTRPG Talk. This video series takes a look at tabletop role-playing games and related materials, makes suggestions for your own games, and shares different resources that I've found related to world building and game design. What we're doing today is we are going to be taking a look at a game that I had actually created myself a while ago. And the reason why I'm discussing it now is because I am actually in the middle of creating the concept for an actual play that will also be utilizing basically a modification of this game in combination with other games to create essentially what is time travel game, or maybe something more along the lines of like Quantum Leap, if you're familiar with that TV show. If you're not, the basic premise is that there's a scientist who's managed to develop a machine that allows them to essentially swap places with the personality of a person from the past. They are essentially entering into that person where their personality kind of gets shunted away into like basically like a pocket dimension for a little bit, and he the scientist actually ends up living out the life of that person. You've probably seen clips or bits from this show before because it's Scott Bakula, the guy who played Captain Archer in Star Trek Enterprise. So it oftentimes put him in really weird or bizarre situations, and he would have to try to solve a problem or resolve some issue in that person's life as a result of like being in that person. So essentially it was a combination of both solving problems and also just the experience of time travel. The game that I created that kind of embraces a lot of that similar concept, in addition to embracing some combinations of things like the Journeyman Project, which was a time travel sci-fi game from the 90s and early 2000s, or a whole series of games, and other forms of time travel, and also some combinations of things that you would expect to see in games like the Assassin's Creed series, where again you're sort of living through the bodily experience of another person that in that case of course is embedded in your DNA. I had created a game called Project Hypaethrus Windows to Time. So again, as I mentioned, this is sort of the basic idea behind this, is to create a basic framework. This one is set up based off of the Bad Time game engine that was created by Kyle Tam of Oriana Games, and they have used this to create a number of games, this system to create a number of games themselves, this sort of Bad Time game system engine. But yeah, the basic idea is that you are traveling into the distant past, or you could also use this system also to do some sort of like dimension hopping, and you're experiencing the past in order to better understand your present and improve the future. In the original game, again, since this is the Bad Times game engine, it's based off of a set of D4 rolls. You roll anywhere between 2 and 4 D4s, and you have to roll below a target number. And if you get above it, then obviously you fail, but you're adding complications to future rolls that you then have to, you're like bumping up a track that you then have to add to any future rolls and make future rolls more difficult. That is the basic idea there for the way that this engine works. However, one thing that I'm not necessarily going to be incorporating large amounts of that particular aspect into this essentially Let's Play. Instead, I'm going to be incorporating a lot of the other elements. One of them is the idea that whenever your character is traveling through time, the way that your character is able to act is because they have certain aspects and skills. This is based off of my Blossom system, if you've seen it before. I'm going to flip screens here real quick. So yeah, each character is made up of group of aspects and skills. The aspects are essentially formative moments in your past, or key elements of your character's personal identity. They could be hobbies, professions, events from your past, cultural legacies that are incredibly important to you personally, or your character personally, and various things like that. So the character starts off with 3 of those. And then what you do is you take combinations of the aspects together in order to create skills. And so the skills are like more refined things. So let's say that one of the aspects that my character has is that they are a sailor. That's their profession. Okay, if we combine that together with, let's say, one of the other things that my character might have is that they went to school and were trained in, let's say, accounting. So then they might have a skill which we might call like quartermaster, let's say. And that quartermaster skill might be useful in helping them when it comes to keeping records of books, helping, preserve provisions, helping keep track of things. Whenever the character is attempting to do an action where an aspect might apply, then they get a bonus to the roll, whether that means that they're rolling a bigger die, or in the case of the original Project Hypaethrus, that they're rolling fewer dice because you want to roll under the target number. And then if a skill would apply, then you get a larger bonus. Or again, in the case of Project Hypaethrus, you'd be rolling the smallest number of dice, which is just 2d4. So those are different. Those are the ways that this particular system worked. In the original Project Hypaethrus, you would actually have 2 sets of aspects and skills whenever you're playing in the past, because you have one set of aspects and skills that fit your present, your character from the present, and then you would have a separate set of aspects and skills that would be associated with your character's past. And so yeah, at the beginning of the session, when you do end up traveling into the past, you would be given a character sheet by the GM at random that has 3 aspects already filled in, and then your character would determine exactly what the skills are as you go through play. The difference, though, in the way that my current system is going to work is that instead of having that past personality with a completely separate set of aspects and skills, they are instead going to have a character sheet based on whatever system that we're utilizing that week, that has, again, a completely separate personality and character. And that is who the present time character is essentially going to be inhabiting or impersonating, or attempting to impersonate in order to accomplish a goal, and then not be, in order to accomplish a goal, and of course also not be discovered. One aspect that I did include in Project Hypaethrus that I'm also going to be including in this actual play is the fact that it's important to determine whether the aspects and skills that are being utilized are from the present personality or the past personality, because if the character is depending too much on their present personality, then that means that the situation is becoming there's the balance tracker that you can see there at the bottom of the page. As the character utilizes their present day skills, that balance tracker will shift further and further over toward the present side of it. And if they are utilizing the aspects and skills from their past personality, it moves further and further towards the past part of the tracker. If it goes too far to the present, then they end up exposing themselves as clearly being not the person they're attempting to pretend to be, or even worse, like making it clear and obvious that they don't belong here in more ways than one, give themselves away. And end up messing something up, or completely, like, you will maybe even getting arrested or killed, or so having something happen to the historical person that really shouldn't have happened to them. If they get balanced too far to the past, if they rely too much on their past skills, the skills of their past personality, a person that they are inhabiting essentially, then they end up experiencing bleed. If you've ever played the game Sleeping Dogs, which is basically a game where you are playing a police officer who is infiltrating the triads of Hong Kong. That's something that that particular character ends up having to experience and deal with a lot, because of course they're having to balance the fact that yes, they're a police officer, but also yes, they're they're a member of a Hong Kong triad, and they're slowly moving up the ranks of the actual organization, the crime organization, and obviously having to commit crimes in order to be involved in this whole process, including harming people, killing people, and all that stuff. So yeah, basically what ends up happening to your character is that as your character experiences bleed, basically elements of the past personality ends up sort of entering into your character. So basically you end up swapping out one of your aspects for the aspect of a past personality, for an aspect that's a part of your past personality. And you carry that with you when you move on to your next jump, or whatever it is that happens, whatever mechanic you're using in your particular version of Project Hypaethrus. And once all three of your aspects have been replaced, your character basically has lost all sense of self, and you actually completely lose. Your character essentially dies. Not literally dies, but like you're like, essentially you're like the ship of Theseus, except every time we replace a piece, it's a completely different new piece. That's completely different from what was there before. So you end up literally becoming someone else. So in that aspect, your character actually kind of dies. And another way that we kind of symbolize that is through bonds. So when you're originally creating your character, each of the aspects is associated with a bond. And that bond is a relationship with a particular character, an NPC, that is critical to your character's past and or present. I originally mentioned that, okay, one of the aspects of our character might be that they're a sailor. Okay, well, what is an attachment what is a bond that character has due to their profession as being a sailor? Okay, maybe this is a person who was very formative in getting them their job, like a boatswain or something, or maybe this is a captain that they used to sail under. Maybe this bond is with a rival that is like somebody they don't really like on the ship when they were sailing. Maybe the relationship is with someone who is someone from their past who like encouraged them to do it, or it could even potentially be a bond to a group of people, or maybe even a bond with a thing. You could stretch it into that, especially if it's like a really important thing to them. But anyway, once the aspect gets lost as a result of bleed, that bond changes in a very negative way, or is not. I wouldn't say it's replaced completely, but it's morphed to essentially you somehow. Okay, so basically the character's past is literally changed or overridden, either if not literally in time, at least in their mind. So that bond is broken. And so basically you need to rewrite the bond relationship so that either it doesn't happen or it happens in a completely different way that is not positive or attached to that aspect anymore. So, for example, in the instance where, okay, we're a sailor, there was a person that we had a bond with who was a close bond relationship with like a captain, like our first captain. They were training us. They took us under their wing. They trained us to be an officer, all that kind of stuff. Maybe instead the bond is that the captain actually was like, we had a really bad relationship with the captain and we actually quit being a sailor and we no longer, we completely abandoned that life and started doing something else instead. So as bonds are lost, of course, once all three of the original bonds have been rewritten, essentially, then, like I mentioned, the character has essentially been completely changed and is done. And you can't replace an aspect that has already been replaced once before. Like, you can't do it a second time. So, yeah, essentially this is the aspects that I'm going to be bringing into this sort of actual play that I'm thinking about doing, is going to be essentially like, you know, the balance tracker and the bonds and the aspects and skills. So because of that, that means, of course, that we've got to create a character. So one thing we're going to do real quick here is essentially is going to be kind of like a session 0 in that we are going to be creating our initial persona, at least the sort of the aspects and skills for this individual. So yes, so of course here we have the 3 aspects, so we're going to be typing that in there, and then each of these aspects of course has to have a bond. Then we need to pair the aspects in order to create a skill. The basic idea behind the setting is that the world is slowly rebuilding. It's post-apocalyptic, let's say, and that, or at least like the beginnings of that sort of post-apocalyptic, where you are you've grown up in this village. The village is the Puebloan sort of like villages that are sort of built into the cliff sides of mesas. I'm kind of envisioning it being kind of like that, and that it's kind of like built into the cliff sides or like built on the cliffside, but instead of it being like the cliffs of like on the sides of a mesa, instead I'm thinking it's like a narrow or like medium-sized canyon, and that one of the reasons why you've sort of like developed here is because, you know, the building here protected you from whatever it was that caused the end of the world previously. So this was a place of shelter. The world, again, it's starting to like come back to life a bit, and, you know, you're starting to be able to kind of explore a bit more and stuff like that, but you know, it's a small village. You've got limited resources, and I'm not thinking it's like lower level tech necessarily, like heavily lower level tech necessarily, but obviously, you know, when you're dealing with a relatively small community, you're pretty limited in what you can like achieve when it comes to like infrastructure and stuff like that. So of course that means a lot of modern technologies, if they still exist, are low impact. They're less useful necessarily for like improving everyday life on like a grand scale, like what you might have in large infrastructure. So it's a bit pieced together and hard scrabble and stuff. Anyway, so one of the ideas is that one of the reasons why you're doing this sort of time travel thing is that you kind of get pulled into doing this, and you're trying to improve your village in part by learning more about the past and kind of learning bits and pieces from the past through artifacts that you find. So basically you are starting to experience the memories or the sort of major situations that happened around these items or the owners of the items in the past. So anyway, so the basic plot line, so that's the basic sort of setting and the idea behind it. Whenever they're creating the aspects for this, I strongly suggest in the sort of rough draft that I've kind of created for that, that sort of quick start, let's say, for character creation, is that each of the three aspects, one of them should be basically what your character is experiencing right now, but you're essentially your young adulthood or maybe late childhood, or it depends on how old your character is. Another aspect should probably be from your childhood or early adulthood, again, if your character is quite old. And then the third aspect should really be something related to your society, or culture, or some connection to something outside of yourself, but is still a key element of your personality. So here I have sort of the basics of the character that I'm thinking of kind of starting with this game. So we have, of course, the three aspects that you can see there all the way on the right of your screen, and on it you can see that our character comes from a family of rock artists. Because I'm thinking, they're in the caves and in the caves or on the cliff sides and stuff like that. They could create small art or big art on the flat plains around the canyon, or whatever. I'm thinking their grandmother probably taught them the basic skills of the rock art, and that this is somehow sacred to their culture or something. And because of that, I'm thinking their grandmother taught them those basic skills, so they have a strong bond with their grandmother. I haven't decided whether or not the grandmother's still alive or not, because that's another thing about the aspects is the relationship does not necessarily die with the person, of course. The impact or the type of relationship that you might have with that character can, of course, continue to exist after they have passed away. So it would, at least in theory, be possible to have a bond with a character who's no longer alive. But still have that bond, of course, be incredibly important for our character, and also still have a way of dissolving that bond where, like, maybe they don't think of the person they had the bond with the same way that they used to, or something like that happens. The second aspect here I'm thinking is that our character loves bringing order to disorder. They just sort of, they probably got brought in at some point, when they were a kid or something, to like help out with organizing something, or I'm thinking probably they were brought into like the granaries and stuff to help sort of organize and keep track of things and stuff like that, and they just became fascinated with the idea of like sort of like organizing things or making things work better and stuff like that. As a result of that, I'm thinking that this society living in this sort of canyon village, they don't have cats necessarily, but of course, first it's a desert environment, so you need to be able to store food for long periods of time, because you never know when you'll be able to get it, and B, it's a dry environment, so things like grain and stuff can last a long time. You don't really need to worry about it like germinating and rotting as quickly, but you still need to worry about animals to a significant extent. So I'm thinking this community has, over the many years of the post-apocalyptic period of things, has domesticated a species of burrowing owl to kind of replace the role that cats traditionally would have played in early human societies. And so he's our character has kind of like I'm thinking he played a pretty significant role in this family of burrowing owls that helps protect the food granaries for the community. So he has a strong relationship with them. Maybe they live a long time. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they can communicate in a way that modern owls obviously can't. But I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Anyway, the third aspect that I'm thinking would be appropriate for our character is that they're a tinkerer. They've become after this sort of like apprenticeship, I guess you could say, in with like the food granaries and stuff like that. They decided that maybe like playing quartermaster and like keeping track of all the things and stuff was not necessarily the most engaging or interesting for them, but they loved doing stuff with their hands, and again they love like organizing things and stuff and like making things work better. So they became involved in the more mechanical aspects. And so they took up a job where they are essentially like the community mechanic, in that they are building new machines or repairing machines and stuff like that to help, like create water power or things like that in the community. As for the skills, the Tinkerer and Loving to Bring Order to Disorder, that very clearly kind of connects into this mechanic skill that I'm thinking our character might have. Combining together Order to Disorder and the family of rock artists, I'm thinking that combining together would result in them having a lot of natural skill when it comes to like things like mineralogy and geology. So I'm thinking, a lot of use of minerals, materials, a lot of experience with material science, and especially focusing on natural materials or metals and crystals and things like that. So yeah, that would probably be a very important skill that they would have developed because of that sort of relationship between the two, between their sort of own personality traits and also skills that they were taught by the grandmother. Finally, the last thing is that because of their artistic skills and talents, but also their experience in tinkering and needing to be able to sort of internally visualize how things link and work together as a part of that practical process, that ability to sort of conceptualize and envision things that aren't necessarily existing yet, or to clearly understand exactly what's happening inside of something, means that they have developed a good skill for drafting, very accurately capturing the reality of what's happening and stuff. That's kind of the idea, the internal idea I have between what's the difference between drawing skills and the difference between artistic drawing skills and drafting skills. So I'm thinking, yeah, that's the main reason why our character is no longer really an artist per se, and like did not follow the family profession. It's just that they just didn't really have that knack of fully expressing themselves through their art, and instead they express themselves through their machinery and through their tinkering and inventiveness. It might be a more accurate thing. So this is going to be, I think, the aspects and skills that we'll use for our character. Again, we'll be layering this on top of another character that will be created for a different system. And whenever our character is utilizing these skills and aspects in our role, then that will boost our present personality on that sort of balance tracker that we had mentioned earlier. And then if our character utilizes is instead utilizing the skills and aspects of their past personality, then it will be pulling the balance in the other direction toward their past aspect. And also I'm thinking, like, if there is a skill or if there's an action that our character needs to do and like skills from both sides could apply, then it doesn't really, I think they kind of cancel each other out. But anyway, I'm thinking like these would give us bonuses to the dice system that we're utilizing in the past. And then also these give us the skills and aspects of whenever a character is in the present and not inhabiting a past person, we still have these skills and aspects in a dice system that we can use to try to figure out what's happening in those instances. So thank you all for joining me here today for the sort of, I guess you could call it a session 0 for the role-playing game actual play that I'm intending on putting together very soon. We'll try to post in like the community tab and stuff like that for when we're getting closer to that going live. But yes, thank you all for joining us again here today on Heston's County. Don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you want to see that actual play. Links to the current version of Project Hypaethrus can be found in the doobly-doo down below. And don't forget to rate your H purchases and have a good song.